Good Tuesday afternoon and welcome to Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles and I am your host right here in Harlingen, Texas in the Rio Grande Valley. And joining me today is South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez. Hey Sandra, what are we chatting about
Rudy.
Today?
Well, we're talking about the impact that ICE raids have on businesses here and throughout South Texas.
All right, well, we'll check in with you a little bit. I know you spoke to some of the folks that represent us on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., so we'll check in with you and hear what they have to say in just a little bit. And we're also going to talk to Jorge Vela, reporter here in Harlingen, Texas. We got a few headlines that are pretty good to segue into that, though, so we'll go ahead and we'll start with those. Right off the top, throughout the Rio Grande Valley, federal immigration officers have been raiding restaurants, businesses, and even flea markets as part of the Trump administration's effort to deport illegal immigrants. Now, the White House has set a quota to arrest 3,000 people a day across the nation. The most notable raid that took place here in the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas took place at a bakery. It's called Abby's Bakery in Los Fresnos, Texas. The owners will go on trial next week, accused of harboring illegal immigrants. Now, since then, a number of restaurants in Cameron and Hidalgo counties have been raided by ICE agents. Workers were detained and in some cases deported to Mexico on the very same day. Now, restaurant owners told us that even employees who have immigration papers and the right to work in the United States, they're just not showing up to work anymore for fear that they might be deported as well. Now, last month, agents also raided a construction site in Port Isabel, Texas, and Brownsville, Texas, and detained 25 workers. Now, at many of these raids, some ICE agents have been showing up in masks and unmarked vehicles, no clothing that actually identifies them as being federal law enforcement officers. And on Tuesday, Senate Democrats introduced legislation that would require immigration enforcement officers to wear clearly visible identification during those raids. The bill would also prohibit the agents from using non-medical face masks. The Visible Act, as it's being called, was unveiled by Senators Cory Booker and Alex Padilla. Now, you may remember that name, Alex Padilla, because you may remember he was forcibly removed from a news conference in Los Angeles last month when he was trying to question Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem during a media event related to immigration. Now, turning to the subject of the day, and joining us for that it's the impact those raids are having on local small businesses in Texas's four southernmost counties. And to talk about that today is reporter Jorge Vela. Hey, Jorge, how are you doing?
Fine. Good to be here.
Now, as typical with this job, we get to know a lot of small business owners, in whichever beat, whether it be Brownsville, Harlingen, McAllen, Rio Grande City. We get to know small business owners of all kinds, all sizes of businesses. And I've been getting a lot of calls from different folks from across the valley again, and they're all pretty much have the same question. Can I ban ICE agents or ICE officers, ICE agents from my property, whether it be, a restaurant or a dry cleaners or a construction site? And, I always give them the same answer, which is, I'm not a lawyer, talk to a lawyer. You did that, and we're going to get to that in a moment. But tell us, first of all, what you've been seeing the last few weeks, because you've been covering this pretty hard here in Cameron County in Deep South Texas. So tell us a bit about what you've been seeing.
Definitely. I mean, there's several businesses, at least 3 that we found through our reporting. That included 2 restaurants and 1 construction site. As for the construction site, they did put fencing and a sign saying that ICE cannot trespass, or they had to call a certain number in order to go in. For the 2 restaurants, there was also a similar sign posted with the phone number to the owner of the business, saying they needed to call them or have a warrant before they could go in. And the legality of this was something that many people on social media have been questioning, if businesses can do this, because, the public can enter into any of these businesses. So I spoke to immigration attorney Carlos Moctezuma Garcia, who spoke about the legality of it.
Continue to do whatever that they can lawfully to protect their business and to protect their employees. A sign is a good start. It doesn't necessarily mean that the federal government won't be able to go onto your property if they have the proper documentation, but it's definitely a sign of the business telling someone, you can't come onto my property unless you have permission.
Now, I was going to say, we're hearing from, but go ahead. I'll continue in a second.
No, definitely. And Attorney Garcia told me this is definitely a sign of the times with these signs being posted. And also, they mean as a way to protect and show solidarity with the community.
And I was going to ask you, you spoke to that immigration or that attorney. Have you been able to speak with any business owners directly about the impacts this is having on their businesses?
When I went to cover Taqueria Mari, which is the business that I went to this morning, and also saw that they still had the sign posted, I actually went in and spoke with one of the employees and asked them if we could do an interview. Interestingly, they called the general manager, which was on the back, and she came outside. But before that, I had actually called the owner of the taqueria, and she had said yes to the interview. But when I was about to begin with the general manager, she then called the owner again and asked for the interview to be cut. She didn't feel comfortable doing it. And when I asked her why, she said, I mean, the sign isn't enough of a statement by itself. So that was pretty interesting to hear it from her in that way. And I did probe a little bit, asked them if I could take some video shots of the restaurant, stuff like that. They did agree, but they didn't want to talk, and they didn't feel comfortable talking about it. Now, I asked also Attorney Garcia about it. He did say that it's good for these restaurants to not bring any more attention other than what they're already bringing with these signs being posted. And he said they have all the right to not conversation about this. But when it comes to these signs, they definitely have the right to put them up and be mindful of who they let in.
Now, if I put up a sign and let's say ICE comes by my restaurant and they don't have a warrant, can they still walk in?
Definitely. I asked Attorney Garcia about this exact question. He said yes, they can still go walk in, and he said something about the consequences. Let's see if we can hear that.
Putting up a sign, putting up a fence will only work in so much as the government respects those signs or that fence. Now, if the federal agents for some reason decide to go onto the property in violation of the law, they're probably going to be able to do whatever they wanted to do, which is seize a person or detain a person. And the reality of that person who was seized unlawfully, the reality of them being able to fight a case or suppress the evidence that was obtained unlawfully is minimal.
Yeah, Mr. Garcia said, even though businesses have the right to put a fence or put a sign outside like they do, most businesses do, not just about ICE, they do not, if ICE would be able to enter a business, and if they do find somebody who is there illegally or somebody that we're looking for, then and a court, an immigration judge might still not grant the business the right for having that sign. In other words, they can still take that person and it would be processed through immigration judges.
Now, I've got some video here of the bakery we were talking about. This was the big panaderia that was raided, kind of the first one when all these raids started happening here in the Rio Grande Valley. Since then, you talked about this business. It's had their sign up for a couple weeks. It was still up this morning when you went by, as you said, and I think I have some video of that right here. Yeah, that sign that you took that video this morning. So have you seen any other businesses in the valley kind of, following their lead?
Definitely. When I first went there about 2-3 weeks ago, they actually told me, why haven't you tried other business? The people from this certain taqueria in Mission, Texas. And I asked, is there any other businesses with signs like these? And they said, yeah, a lot of businesses posted them. We did go check several other businesses. We didn't see any signs. So when I told them I didn't see any other signs, they said, I don't know, maybe they took it down or something. But this particular taqueria, I went there today in the morning, and they still have that sign. It's still there, posted. I did check nearby restaurants and other businesses. I didn't see any of the other signs. But when I started taking B-roll at this particular taqueria Mari, there was a person outside, and I went in my unmarked unit from the news station, and I did overhear people saying, hey, is that ICE? Is that an attorney? Who's that taking pictures? And I mean, that just shows the sentiment, the feeling that many of these businesses have, as even Attorney Garcia said, the economy is being impacted in many ways, and this is a way for these businesses to show solidarity and also try to fight back a little bit and protect their own property.
Now, let me ask you this. Have you heard of any businesses saying, hey, we had employees that just after those first raids, they dipped, they haven't been back, and say, hey, some of our former employees are now feeling safer to come to work, or are they still kind of just hurting for employees?
I have not heard yet about that, but I mean, I also talked to a restaurant employee who actually self-deported after he was caught, and he did say that a lot of their coworkers, especially the ones who are legal residents or American citizens, they were always trying to protect them, always trying to make sure they felt comfortable. And whenever somebody that would see an unmarked unit or something, they would alert them to, hey, be careful, be ready for anything. So I haven't heard that yet, but I mean, this restaurant is an example of a particular trend that might be growing. Attorney Garcia did say that he expects this to be a growing trend once they see what happens. But according to him, this is something new he has never seen before, and he's eager to find out whenever a raid happens at this place and see what develops.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your reporting on this, Jorge. I know you've been working this story for a few weeks now, and we appreciate you coming on. We'll definitely have to have you back on to check in again to see where some of these businesses are today. So thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
All right. And for those of you at home, stay with us, because when we come back, South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez is here to talk more about these ICE raids and the impacts happening across the valley. Border Report Live is back in a minute. Welcome back to Border Report Live. Joining me now for this Wednesday edition of Border Report Live, is South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez. Hey, Sandra, how are you?
Hi, Rudy. I'm great. How are you today?
Good to see you. I'm good as well. Now, I know you've been talking to some of the folks that represent us up in D.C. on Capitol Hill about this, so I'll let you go ahead and take it away.
Well, yeah, our Nexstar affiliate in Washington, D.C. actually recorded these interviews. So I don't want to take credit for my colleagues. I do speak to our local reps a lot. And, these ICE raids have been a big concern. I think one of the issues that Jorge touched upon, this underlying fear that has affected people and businesses and economically can affect this region. U.S. Representative Vicente Gonzalez, he represents Congressional District 34, which includes Cameron County and parts of Hidalgo County, here where we are right now in Harlingen. He actually sent a letter to President Trump on June 24th asking for an executive order that would allow small businesses to basically sponsor someone who has been here in the country undocumented illegally for 3 years or more, in order for them to find a legal pathway to work. He says that people in the industries that take care of senior citizens and restaurants, as Jorge mentioned, farm workers, the construction workers, these industries are being extremely hard hit. Our GDP, our economy is going to be affected, and we need to find a way to keep these people and to help them work. And so he sent this letter, and he asked him, some of what the letter he said, it would allow small businesses to sponsor undocumented migrants. He said, quote, this executive order would provide migrants temporary lawful status on a yearly basis and allow them to continue working without a fear of deportation. And he calls it a common sense solution that moves the needle forward and helps struggling American businesses prosper while creating a temporary pathway for those who contribute to the country. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I actually think we have a little bit of what Congressman Gonzalez actually told our correspondent on Capitol Hill.
Well, for people who have been in this country for 3 years or longer, some of them have been here for 10, 20, 30 years. They've never been in trouble. They're hardworking citizens. They contribute to our communities. They should have an immediate pathway through an executive order to be here legally. An employer should be able to sponsor them at least a year at a time and assure that they can continue doing the hardest work in America that Americans won't do. And this is in the construction sector, in the agriculture sector, in hotels, motels, restaurants. People who are taking care of the senior citizens and children in this country are mostly immigrant help. And we need to find ways to get them out of the shadow and do it immediately. These ICE raids, the way they're being conducted, are disgraceful. They're inhumane. They're very un-American. I'm shocked by some of the visuals that I see on TV, that I see on social media. It's a very aggressive enforcement, something that I don't think anybody had ever seen before in this country, not in our lifetime. And I think it's shameful for this administration the way they're conducting themselves. These are good people. The vast majority are good people that have never committed crimes. And in fact, that's why they're picking them up, because they couldn't find enough criminals. The way they initially told us, you're not going to get 1 million criminals. It's been proven immigrants that come to this country commit crimes at a much lower rate than American citizens do. So you're not going to round up 1 million criminals that are undocumented. And I think they're trying to keep up with their quota. They've gotten very, very aggressive. It's created unrest on the streets of America, and we need to bring this to the end. But more than anything, it's hurting American businesses. It's hurting our agriculture sector. It's hurting our construction sector. In Texas, people aren't showing up to jobs. This is putting pressure on banks that have made construction loans that have timelines to them and jobs that can't be fulfilled. I hear that they're pouring concrete at midnight because that's the only time that they think that they can evade ICE arrests. I find that just disgraceful as heck. And we need to find a solution. Arresting millions of people in the manner that they're doing it is not the solution.
And now, one of the things that the congressman was talking about there was the financial impact this is having. You know, he mentioned, some of these folks that have been working for some of these small businesses for 20, 30 years. One thing that a lot of folks don't take into account is, taxes. Those people have been part of their local and county and state tax base for so long. Talk about a little bit about all of the financial impact, if you could.
Yeah, one thing he said in the letter to President Trump, he said if these rates continue, we could start to see a loss in the workforce of 1.5 million construction workers, 1 million in the hospitality industry, over 800,000 in manufacturing, 500,000 in general services. Transportation workers could be cut by 460,000, and 250,000 from the agriculture industry, which, feeds our tables, right? He says our gross domestic product could lose 4.2% of annual GDP, or over $1 trillion in. And, he said, to compare that, okay, during the Great Recession in 2007 to 2009, he said GDP fell by 4.3%. So we're kind of talking about the same numbers. So, and he did. He said that in 2022, undocumented immigrants paid $22.6 billion to Social Security, $5.7 billion to Medicare. So, he's saying as the population ages, we need these workers. We need the funds that they put into it. And as you can guess, he's Democrat. He's a Democrat from this district. I don't think I said that, but we want to balance it out because we did also speak to the Republican Congresswoman from this area, Monica De La Cruz.
And I think you said we have a soundbite from her as well. But I did want to ask you, one of the things that Congressman Gonzalez mentioned was the hospitality industry, 1 million workers. Just for a little context, down here in the Rio Grande Valley, I believe that's one of our top 2 or 3 employment sectors. So I mean, that just kind of goes to show that it can happen anywhere. And we're talking hospitality. We have South Padre Island, which is a resort town. So at pretty much all those resort areas across the country where you have big hospitality sector could be impacted by that.
Right. Another area is senior care, which we have a lot of senior care centers here. And
a lot of snowbirds that come down to retire here as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's definitely impactful. But tell us a little bit about what Congresswoman Monica De La Cruz had to say.
Yeah, so, she's Republican. She's on the Agriculture Committee, and she says that there needs to be a way to streamline what's called the H-2A Farm Worker Visa Program. And this is a program that allows undocumented workers to come over for up to 3 years, but it is very complicated. There's a lot of paperwork from the employer's side as well as the migrant themselves. A lot of these people just can't maneuver the paperwork. And she's saying that if we're going to continue to have the fields picked and to have this industry growing, we need to streamline this. Here's a little bit about what she said.
That illegal immigration is not something that they support, but they also need a labor force that will do the hard work under the hot Texas heat. First and foremost, what we want to promote is legal immigration, and our farmers already use a program called the H-2A program. But what I'm hearing from meeting with our farmers is that the H-2A program program has lots of bureaucracy in it. It's very difficult. It takes a lot of time, and that often they have to go to outside agencies to help them with the process. So what our farmers want to do is bring people over here in a legal manner to help work on the farms, but they want the H-2A program to be streamlined. And after listening to my farmers and ranchers, that's exactly what I'm doing, is working on legislation that will streamline the process to help our farmers get the workforce they need. Farming is...
Now, that's really hopeful, but unfortunately yesterday, Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins, who's actually from Texas, came out and said that at a press conference that there will be, quote, no amnesty for farm workers in the country without authorization. And she emphasized that the administration wants a 100% American workforce.
All right. Well, we do have some questions about those H-2A visas, and we'll get to those when we return. We're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. Border Report is back in 1 minute. Welcome back to Border Report Live. Now, just before the break, we were talking about, sorry about that, folks. Just before the break, we were talking about H-2A visas. Sandra?
Yeah, okay, allows the temporary or seasonal workers to come in. And like I mentioned, it's complicated. Our show's going fast. I know we're kind of running out of time, but the worker can only be here for 1 to 3 years maximum. And then they have to self-deport. They have to leave for at least 60 days. They have to apply to their consulate or the port of entry or to the U.S. Department of Labor with an H-2A petition, or the Department of State for them, but their employer has to apply to the Department of Labor. And so it's a very lengthy process. Congresswoman De La Cruz was just saying it's so complicated for many people. Some people just come across and want to work in the fields, and we've got to find a solution that documents everyone, that allows these jobs to continue, but isn't so cumbersome.
One of the things that I have to ask is, these individuals want to come and work, but, if they get this visa, can they bring their families, their spouse, their children with them?
Yes, they can, but then they have to apply for another visa. It's called an H-4 non-immigrant classification visa, and the families cannot work while they're here under that visa. So, ton of paperwork going on here.
President Trump has said that he wants to give farm workers and hotel workers a pass. Have you heard anything about this?
Yeah, and he's flip-flopped on this idea, just like tariffs. We go back and forth on how he supports it. He has said that it's important that the people who work in the hotel industry and in the fields be allowed to continue. But then, as I quickly mentioned, Secretary Rollins yesterday at a press conference said, no, we want 100% of American workforce. She went on to say that, there's so many people on Medicaid, so many people accepting help from the government, and they could get and take those jobs. They could be able working people. So, we'll see. And, she's on his cabinet, so she theoretically represents his views.
It's got to be confusing for folks out there. I mean, it seems like the process to immigrate for whatever reason to the United States is so convoluted, so complicated, and then to see federal officials kind of going back and forth. Have you heard anything about that kind of confusion?
Well, and they put out what we call trial balloons. They say one thing and see how the public reacts. So let's see if this is a trial balloon with a secretary's statements yesterday. Maybe they will retract that. I have to say Congresswoman De La Cruz has Rollins' ear, and she's on the Ag Committee, and she seems to be getting a lot of attention to this region. Recently, we talked about the money for the screw worms down here eradication program. So, I'm kind of thinking that Congresswoman De La Cruz is going to help direct this narrative in the future.
It definitely seems like both representatives from down here in the Valley want some sort of solution. So it seems like they're both working towards, trying to get some of these folks to work here legally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And just before we go, we have just about a minute left, but I did want to talk about some specifically in the new data on detentions, but I found something interesting. There's new fines that DHS and DOJ are imposing on people that cross illegally. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, $100 to $500 per unlawful entry or attempted entry, and almost $2,000 to $10,000 for failure to honor or voluntary departure order. So they can be fined up to $1,000 a day for failing to comply with removal orders. Now, remember, recently Secretary Noem said if you self-deport, we'll waive those fines, but legally, they can charge them. So did want to say, I know we're running out of time, the story that I am working on today does have to do with ICE, and it has to do with new data from Transactional Records Access Clearinghouse that found many migrants who have been arrested by ICE and detained are being held in facilities that are over capacity. So we've got that one on borderreport.com.
Well, as you said, it's on borderreport.com. Thank you, Sandra, for joining us. Thanks to Jorge Vela for joining us at the top of today's show. If you want to read more about that story that Sandra is working on, or any of the stories our team are working on, head over to borderreport.com. You can also watch this edition and every other past edition right there as well. Speaking of, you can watch this one there now. We'll talk to you all tomorrow.